Hi guys, in this video we are going to discuss about the data types in C++ programming language. So first we will discuss the different type of data types available in C++ programming, and after that we will implement some programs on the VS Code. So while discussing the concept of the variables, we discussed that variables can be classified into the multiple types like int, float, double, char, string, bool. In the similar way, data types are also classified into the multiple types. So we are going to discuss about data types. Data types in C++. Let's first discuss about the basic definition of the data types. So the basic definition of the data type says that the data type the data type specified by the size and the type of information and the type of information the variable will store. The variable will store. Basically, we are having a different data type like the int, float, char, string, double. So these are different data types available in C++ programming language. Now, whenever you are creating any kind of variable, so the syntax for creating variable, syntax for creating variable. The syntax says first you need to write the type, what kind of data you want to store. Then you will write the variable name. This we have discussed while discussing the concept of variable. So variable name, and then you are going to store the data, store the value. So this is the syntax. So in this particular information, this is called as a data type. Data type means what kind of data you are going to store. Data type. This is the data type. What kind of data you want to store inside that particular variable, and it also specify the size. Size means each data type is associated with a particular size. Let's consider it is an int. So it can store the data up to the 4 byte. Can store the data up to the 2 or 4 byte. Okay. It is a float, so it can only store the data up to the 4 byte. If you want to increase the size, let's consider you want to store the information which is greater than the 4 byte, and it is a floating point number. So instead of float, you are going to use the double, because double can store the data up to the 8 byte. Okay. In the similar way, the character can store the data up to 1 byte. 1 byte character means a single character, like C, A. These all are single character. String we will discuss later, but for now you can simply understand. For let's remove the string from here for now. Okay, so these are main data types in float, char. There is also a boolean. Boolean means a true or false. So true or false is going to store the data in a single byte, 1 byte. Okay. So these are the different size of different data type. Int can store the data from 2 byte to the 4 byte. Float can store the data up to the 4 byte. Boolean can store the data 1 byte. Char can store the data 1 byte. Double can store the data up to the 8 byte. This is the information, and we already have discussed that int is going to store the integer numbers like the 1, 2, 3,000. Okay, int can store the values in this way. Float can store the decimal point up to the 7 places like 2.12, 3.14. So these are float. It can store the data up to the 7 decimal places, but in case of double can store the data up to the 15 decimal places, to the 15 decimal places. Okay. So if you are having a number which is having a 15 decimal places, you are going to store that inside the double. But if it is less than 7 decimal places, then you are going to use the float. Character means a single character, A, B, like this, and boolean means either true or false. Okay. So this was the information about the data types. Now let's create a program in the VS Code to check the different size of basically the different size of data which the data types can store. Let's write a program. So here I am creating a new file, datatypes.py, datatypes.cpp. Here I want to write a program, write write a program to check the size of different data types. I simply want to check whether this information I provided is correct or not. Whether I want to check whether int is able to store the data up to 4 byte, float is able to store the data up to 4 byte. I simply want to check these information. For that, we are going to write a program. So for checking the size of different data types, there is a default function provided by the C++, and that function is called as to check the size of the data type. There is a default function that is called as size of, and inside this you are going to pass that particular data type. In this way you can get the size of that particular data type. So let's write a program. So first I'm including the header file, including iostream using namespace standard, and then main function. Inside this main function, first I want to check the size of the integer. So I'm writing size size of the int, and then I will use the size of, and inside this I will pass the int. I want to check the size of int, so I have passed the int over here. Then I want a line break. Now int byte. This is byte, and then a line break. Okay. In next line, I want to check the size of the float. Again, I will use the same thing, size of. And this time I will pass the float, and then I will write byte, and then the line break. Then again I want to check the size of double, and then size of is a default function using which you can check the size of that particular data type, and then byte break, line break. Then cout, this time I want to check the size of the boolean, and the size of will be byte, and then a line break. Again, let me copy this. This time I want to check the size of character, and then a size of char. Let's save this and let's execute this program. Program is getting executed. Wait for the output. So the size of int is 4 byte, as I told you that int can store the data up to the 4 byte. Then size of float is 4 byte, but the size of 8 is double byte. Size of double is 8 byte. That's the reason float is only able to store the data up to the 7 decimal places, but in case of double, you can store the data up to the 15 decimal places. Then size of boolean is 1 byte. Size of character is also one byte. So in this way, you can check the basically the size of different data types available in C++. So in this we discussed about multiple things. And if you want to create a variable with a particular data type, you can create in this way. If you want to create a data, if you want to store an integer value, you will write int var1, and inside this you can store a value like 10. So in this way you can create the different data type, the different variable with the different data type. If you want to store the floating point number, you will use the float. If you want to store the character, then you can use the char, but you also need to change the value over here. Like a. If I want to use character, so I will be using the a, like any character. In this way, you can create the different variable with different data type. In this video, we discussed about the different data types available in C++ programming language, and those data type and what size of information that data types can store. So this we have discussed.